This is Things I Need to Learn in Life I Didn't Learn in School, covering everything we should know as adults that got glossed over in our classrooms. With your host, Wave News anchor, Dawne Gee.
We welcome you back this week for another Things I Need to Learn in Life I Did Not Learn in School. There's so many things we want to do, so many things that we need to know. And maybe we didn't learn them in school, but that information is out there and we will share it with you. I'm Dawne Gee. I thank you so very much for joining me today. Elizabeth Wessels-Martin is here from the Center for Women and Families. They do so much work. So let me just first say that this is a different kind of podcast today. We've been doing things that are kind of fun, kind of informational. Center for Women and Families, they do so much work keeping our families, keeping people safe, especially from domestic violence. So maybe some people right now are saying, what in the world do I need to learn about domestic violence, right?
Right.
I wish we could say that for everyone.
Yes.
And Elizabeth, I talk to you often. Yes. I work with the Center for Women and Families often. Unfortunately, we have a problem.
Yep.
But we have more of a problem right now than we have ever heard before. When I read these statistics, that is how I knew. I said, okay, I have got to have Elizabeth come in. So generally, we have issues of domestic violence.
Right.
Everywhere does.
Right, exactly.
But the mayor called a meeting the other day asking you to come.
Yes.
La Casita Center, Metro United Way, a lot of different groups.
Right.
Because we're seeing something different than we've ever seen before. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Absolutely. So since January of this year, 2022, we have had, and I apologize, I'm having a hard time keeping track. I know that we have had at least, I believe it is 15 domestic violence related homicides. Now, when I say that, there's a little bit of a difference because I believe we have had 2 to 3 homicides in which the perpetrator or one individual tried to hurt another, and the victim in the situation was able to get out of the situation. The perpetrator did die in that situation. So that's why we call those domestic violence related. We have had 13 homicides in which the victim was not able to get away, and unfortunately, in those situations, that victim died. So in Jefferson County in 2021, this time last year, we'd had 2.
Okay, so that blew my mind.
Right.
I went, what?
Right.
What? The world has lost its mind.
It absolutely has.
We're having trouble. And then I think about all the issues right now of families being able to do something simple like get gas, get food, make it to work. We are facing tension like we've never faced before. And if you're already having issues in a relationship, this is blowing out of control.
Absolutely.
So what do you need to know? I don't know. I hope you never need to use this information, but maybe someone you know, you work with, you love, needs to use this information. I do believe, let me just say this and put it out here. Elizabeth knows I do not talk about this. I don't know why I don't talk about it. I'm not ashamed of it anymore. The only time I have fully explained what happened to me in my marriage, I wrote a post for your website, and I laid it all out like I've never laid before, and couldn't believe how many people reached out to me saying, God bless you, thank you.
Yes.
Why don't we talk about it? I know you can't talk why I don't talk about it specifically, but what is it? For me, there was almost shame connected to it.
Well, there is for every victim. Every victim I've ever met, every victim I've ever had conversation with in my 30 plus years of doing this work feels ashamed. And part, a big piece of that comes from as the abuse has happened, because again, we know relationships don't start out as abusive. They start out 2 people coming together, they care and they love each other, or they think they do, and then things progress. And power and control, the perpetrators, we refer to the person who is eliciting the abuse. It's about power and control. And so that power and control things start to take place, controlling where the person's going, maybe what they're wearing. Are they able to have access to money, how they're spending their money? I mean, all the things that go on in our daily lives, all of a sudden that perpetrator is starting to control, as well as emotional and mental abuse. So a lot of putting the person down, making them feel like that they're worthless. And when you get that time after time after time, at some point you start believing that. Your self-esteem and your self-confidence just gets whittled away like water dropping on a rock. And it just gets whittled and whittled away. And so, and the relationships in that victim's life who have been supportive and loving, family, friends, coworkers, they start to go away because, again, the perpetrator's controlling. And so in order to control you, I have to get rid of all those positives and supports because I have to have you to myself. And as that self-confidence and that self-esteem is going away, and as the physical abuse often starts, the victim's getting blamed. This is your fault. If you wouldn't, if you would have dinner on the table, I wouldn't get so angry. And so those messages that the victim hears over and over that this is your fault, unfortunately, victims start to believe that. And they start to believe that somehow they are responsible for the horrible things that are happening to them. And so that's a lot of where the shame comes from. And so also this sense of belief that, if I'm powerful enough to cause this, am I powerful enough to stop it? And so there's a real, kind of a push-pull in this. And what we see is that victims, one, believe that they're responsible, and two, that somehow they should have done something to stop that. And neither one of those are true. A victim is never responsible for the abuse that happens in their life. And oftentimes the perpetrator is sometimes a physically larger person. And they have gained that power and control, and so it is very hard to stop. And that's why we tell people all the time, please reach out to us. Don't do this alone, because one, you may not know some things that we can help you with in terms of safety planning. We also know that the time that a victim leaves their perpetrator is at the most lethal. And what we mean by that is that's the most deadly. Those 24 to 48 hour time period that victim has said to their perpetrator, I'm done, I'm leaving, is the most deadly. Because the perpetrator is thinking, oh my gosh, I'm losing control over you. I gotta hold on to you. And if I can't have you, then nobody's gonna have you. And so that's where things start to amp up. And so oftentimes when we go into these cases where victims have died, we do hear that, what the victim's saying, I'm leaving, I'm done. When Angelica James was murdered by Christopher Gordon, what did she say to him? I'm done, I'm leaving, you're not gonna do this to me anymore. He pulled out a gun and he shot her. The woman that was shot and killed at the gas station over in Indiana, the same exact thing.
Yes.
And so over and over we hear this, and we so badly want to have these conversations and want to be there with victims so that we can help prepare them for when it is time to exit, so that they can exit safely. But as we know, again, you talked about the shame. Why is it there? Because that's the power and control. If I can keep you down and I can keep you to myself, and you're totally emotionally dependent upon me, you're not going to leave me. And so that's a huge piece where that sense of somehow I'm responsible for this. Somehow I should have known better. Somehow I should have, and all that is not true. It is not. And that's, the other thing that we always tell people when they ask us how do they approach a victim. So I said, first of all, never ask a victim, why don't you leave?
Really? Because in my mind, and I've been in the shoes of being a victim before, in my mind, even after going through that, even for myself, the main question I think is, why don't you leave? Why not ask that question?
Because it just fuels that sense of shame. It just fuels that sense of, I've done something wrong. When we say to somebody, why didn't you leave? It's a judgmental statement. I'm judging you because you've not taken the steps to leave. We don't know the victim's situation. We don't know what's keeping them there. Maybe they don't have any money. Maybe they're afraid they're going to lose their children. Maybe there's some criminal activity involved. Maybe they are, using some drugs and alcohol. And we work with individuals all the time that they're using drugs and alcohol as a way of coping with the trauma, a way of coping with the physical injuries. And so we never want to say to a person, why don't you leave? What we say is, how can I help you? How can I help you be safe? How can I get you to a safe place? What do you need to be safe? Nobody knows a victim situation better than a victim. And because one of the things that victims will tell you is, I know everything about my perpetrator. I know their walk, I know their actions, I know their sleep patterns, I know their work patterns, I know all that, because that's a survival technique. They've learned to have to predict, here he comes or here she comes in the house. Whoo, she slammed that door hard.
So then you know what's coming next.
Then you know what's coming next. That's right.
Oh, you just gave me chills.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know, it just kind of takes me back for me, I started seeing things ramp up and get more violent. I had 2 small children.
Right.
I start seeing that person begin to kind of do things to my children that I didn't like. I didn't want to have to kill him, because that's what it was going to come to. I hate saying that, but you can mess with me all day long.
Right.
You touch my children, I'm done.
Right. Absolutely.
But you don't want it to get to that.
You don't want it to get to that point.
I can remember it was Christmas, and I hope I can get through this without being too emotional. And he didn't want me to go eat with my family.
That's right. That's right.
And then he finally said, you go ahead and go. I'm not going. And I think he thought maybe I would stay.
Sure.
And I got out of there as quickly as I could with my children, right? And I got there, and my grandmother said, while we were preparing the table in the kitchen, ask where he was. I don't even know how it came out, but I said, Grandma, I think I'm leaving him. And I just thought there was going to be more shame, and you stay with your husband, and my grandmother didn't miss a beat. She was putting the butter on the thing, bread down on the table, and she said, well, it is going to be a Merry Christmas. I'm glad to hear that. And it felt like a wave of a blessing. Like, did she just, and that started it.
Right.
That Christmas morning, I didn't say I was leaving because I didn't know what he would do.
Sure.
I called my mom, and I had said, I'm leaving, and she didn't say anything. That's because she had already hung up the phone, and she went and got a U-Haul, and it pulled up in front of the house, and my whole family came in, and he wasn't going to touch me with all of them there.
Right.
I got away.
That's right.
I got away. So I asked you here because what do you do? What's the first thing that you do?
The first thing that you do when you know that you're in danger, the first thing that we recommend people do is to take an emergency protective order.
Okay, let's just hold on there.
Okay.
I initially called you because we had this conversation. I hope you don't mind that I shared this.
No, please.
I called you, and the mayor was talking about, getting EPOs and all of that. My phone started ringing, women saying, I tried to get an EPO, and I couldn't get this, and, I don't even know where to get an EPO, and I mean, just all of these EPO questions, and I called you, and I said, Elizabeth, help. I don't know the answers to this.
Right.
It's not always easy to get an EPO. Am I right when I say that?
It's not always easy. But what the first step is to go down to the Domestic Violence Intake Center. So we call it the DVIC. It's Domestic Violence Intake Center. It is in the Hall of Justice. It's in the Jefferson County Circuit Clerk's office. David Nicholson oversees the DVIC, and we recommend that people go down there. They do have staff down there that can have some conversation. Why are you down here? What's going on? To help give some guidance.
Is it 9 to 5 though?
It's actually 24/7.
I knew you were going to say that. So if it's 3 a.m. and I know I'm in trouble, I can go down there.
Yes, you can. Absolutely, absolutely. And if people want to know more, they can also call us, and we will walk them through. We will give them some tips, some conversation around that, because sometimes people will take out EPOs that don't quite warrant that yet, unfortunately.
What does that mean, though? Not quite warrant that. Because if I see it ramping up, maybe he hasn't broken my arm yet. Where does it get to that I'm allowed to have an EPO?
Usually where they have done something that threatens your life. they've pulled a gun on you, they have physically injured you, you know they have a weapon, they're looking for, because an EPO will go eventually to the judge. And sometimes judges will grant EPOs and sometimes they won't. And oftentimes when they don't, it's things have not gotten to the point where the victim's life is in jeopardy or they're at jeopardy of being seriously injured.
Okay, I know you don't have anything to do with that.
Right.
But in my mind, that's too late.
And I would agree with you. Unfortunately, we know that so much of our law enforcement and our legal system, things come into play when something has happened.
It's too late.
It is too late. It's, we have some laws now around stalking, but once stalking has started, the trauma has already occurred.
Yes.
Yeah.
And another question, in this business, we deal with a lot, and there was someone I'd never met, didn't know, and this person had begun stalking and doing things and writing things, and I found out that an EPO, I hope I'm right here, is when you're in a relationship.
Right.
But there is something that you can take out for someone you're not in a relationship.
Right. There's also it's called an IPO.
That's an IPO. What does that
It's an
stand for?
intimate partner protective ordinance.
Okay.
Because people are living together more now than they are
getting married.
Yes.
So EPO is like husband-wife
and
kind of thing. IPO is for a relationship.
So you've been in a long-term relationship. You do have to show some evidence, or you have to say, yes, they lived under the same address, or they dated for several years. Something that identifies to the judge that this is a pretty tight relationship. You're not married, but maybe you have a checking account together, maybe you have the same address. You can show that your relationship is pretty intimate.
And then isn't there another one for someone you don't? What's a DVO?
A DVO is a domestic violence order. It actually comes after an EPO.
Oh, okay. All mixed up on that.
Yeah.
Okay, but here's the thing. For somebody you don't know, and this probably doesn't happen often to just, people.
Right.
Is there not something like if you do get someone that's just maybe
you
lost
actually can
their
get
way?
let me restate that. So an EPO isn't just for domestic. It's not.
Okay.
So
I
you
got
can't
that.
get an EPO for that.
Okay, you
Yes,
can. Okay,
yes.
so I just want everyone to understand that whatever the situation,
Yes.
there is some help.
There is absolutely some help. People have a right to live safely. And that's what we want people to know, and we want people to again, take the steps. Now, one of the things I want to make really clear, because we get a lot of these questions, and I think you and I have talked about this, an EPO, an IPO, even a DVO.
It's not going to protect
It's
you.
not
If
gonna
he
protect
is
you.
bound, determined
That's right.
to get to you, he's going to do it.
That's absolutely right. That's
Yeah.
absolutely right. Too many of these homicides recently have happened.
Okay, so what do you do?
So what we recommend people do is if you're going to take out an EPO or an IPO, and you go down and you do it, you fill out the petition. It's going to be sent to a judge. Those are family court judges that have EPO court or IPO court. Then once you'll get a court date. Okay, the victim will get a court date mailed to them. Once they receive that piece of paper and their court date is determined, call the center. Call the center and let us know you want an advocate with you in court. Tell us the court date, because we schedule, like everybody else in the world, we're short-staffed. And so we're not in court as much as we were, so we're only doing referrals right now. And so what we want people to do is once you get that court date, call us. Tell us, my letter says I have court on this date and I'm in this courtroom, here's my name. All right, we're going to be there. We're going to have an advocate there with you. Because what we want to do with you before that EPO is granted is talk about safety planning. Because what's going to happen is if that EPO gets granted, that sheriff is going to hand deliver that EPO once the perpetrator is found. And so one of the things, I've known situations that have gone on for 2 weeks before a sheriff can find that person because they're in hiding. But once that perpetrator is found, they get handed that EPO. And so you got to think about, they're now been told you have to stay away from this person.
And she. Let me first apologize. I've been saying he.
There are
men are victims too.
Absolutely, we have men in our.
So
yes.
I apologize. That is just a thing. I apologize.
Well, we know that more women are abused by men.
Right.
I mean, the statistics show, but we do have we have same-sex relationships, and we do have men that we serve. But But yeah, they're going to be angry. They're going to be ragefully angry. And so what would they want to do? They want to retaliate. And so that's why we say to them, call us, let us do some safety planning with you, because we're going to probably ask you questions that you may not have thought about. We're going to talk to you about, okay, maybe you need to change the way you drive to work. Maybe you need to change the time you leave for work or leave to come home. Maybe you need to change the time you go to the gym. Maybe you need to change gyms. Where do you park? And it is even safe to still stay in your house. Do you have some other place that you can go? Does he have access to weapons? How many weapons? So we're going to really get down into the minutia of your life to help you determine what's safe, because the perpetrator knows every detail. They may even still be tracking you on your phone. You know, we have a lot of these situations with shared locations, and they can see where you are and where you're not. We've even seen in some situations with all this technology and Alexa, you know, turning on lights and opening garage doors and all of that. We're seeing a lot of that being used in abusive relationships. So it's really, really important that you talk to us and talk about your safety plan.
I think it's important, and again, this is from personal experience. When I left the house, I let at least 2 people know.
That's right.
I'm leaving for work. I'm driving this way.
Yep.
I should be at work in 15 minutes.
That's right.
I'll let you know when I get there.
That's right.
I said, I'm going to the store. This is the store I'm going. And that's bothersome and burdensome. But until you are safe and your life hopefully gets to back on track, those are things I feel like you need to do. Is that right?
You absolutely do. Absolutely. There was a situation that happened about a month ago that I became aware of, where victim had taken an EPO out on the perpetrator. She thought everything was calm. She was driving to work. He literally came out of nowhere and T-boned her car. Enough that then he reached in, grabbed her, and in the middle, this was like at 10 o'clock in the morning, broad daylight, beat her.
Oh.
As people stood around and watched, which is just mind-blowing to me. Luckily, one of my colleagues, a community partner here, saw it and immediately called 911.
Okay, so you bring up another thing. Anymore, you know, it used to be if people saw something wrong, they would step up.
Right.
You get killed today.
Absolutely.
Like I saw a woman in a doctor's office, and this child was climbing up a bookshelf. The mother said nothing. So another woman said, honey, come down off that bookcase. It may fall on you. And the mother threatened to beat that woman to a pulp.
Oh.
And I only say that because there are just so many times you see things and you're like, do I say something?
Right.
Because you want to do what's right. But in today's world, I just feel like you do what's right and somebody goes crazy.
Oh, absolutely.
So what do you do as a bystander if you see something?
The best, if you see something like that, if you can, what I have done, because I've had a situation, I was driving down 3rd Street one day and I was going to lunch, and I saw this woman getting in her car, and I saw a guy come running out of a store, and he grabbed her by the hair. I just screamed. I just rolled down my window and I screamed as loud as I could, and enough that he stopped and she was able to get away, and I called 911. If you can create a distraction in that situation, because we never want people to put themselves in danger. But if you can create a distraction of some sort, whether it's blowing on your horn, whether it's screaming at somebody, please do, and always call 911. Always call 911.
Isn't it crazy though that we're in a world where this is
and
what we have to think about?
It is. It makes me really sad. I've been in the world of working with family violence, you know, since the early 80s, and I just feel like we definitely are seeing a time where it's gotten worse. I mean, gun violence, we know in our city, has gotten worse. Drug and alcohol use has gotten worse. Poverty, you know, I'm as concerned as everybody about what's happening with our gas and food. I mean, my gosh. And all of those things just add stress to families that already have stress. You know, I heard of a situation, we had somebody that reached out to us that was beat pretty badly, and it was because there wasn't enough food in the refrigerator. You know, and it's not her fault, but he decided he was going to take it out on her. And so we see that over and over again. And so as people's needs aren't being met, no matter how stable or unstable they are, we tend to take it out on other people. And that's what we see a lot of.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot. Is there anything that you ever just say, if I could just tell people this?
If I could just tell people that when you start to, you're in a relationship and you start to feel like, this isn't right. Why am I being treated this way? Why is this person talking to me this way? And you start to find yourself fearful. Reach out to the center, have a conversation, so that we can talk about the power. We do a group called Choices. It's a voluntary, it's a support group. People can come. We get a lot of people that are court ordered. We'd love for people to have the information ahead of time. But it talks about, as we talk about the power and control wheel, so that people start to understand the subtleties. Relationships are supposed to be safe. Even if we have conflict, everybody has conflict in a relationship, but they're supposed to be safe. People aren't supposed to put somebody down. You know, you don't scream and yell and call somebody names because you're angry at them. You know, we want people to learn skills like, I need some time out. I am so angry with you right now. I'm going to go take a walk, or I just can't even talk to you right now. I mean, that's normal. We have that in families. But it's not okay to hit. It's not okay to put somebody down. It's not okay to kick the dog or take your anger out on kids. I had a woman talk just yesterday about how she finally got out of a relationship because her boyfriend hit her son.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm the same way, you know. Don't mess with my with my children.
You mess with me, but
don't mess with my pets either.
Right? Don't
touch my dogs.
And I would think, just in anything, the hardest step is the first step.
It is.
Which is making that call. Like I always think with people who are having issues with mental health or depression, the hardest step is that first step to call and get help. But once they do reach out to you, that they'll see there's an order, there's help.
Right. And people can call the center as much as they want. They can call today, they can call tomorrow, they can call tonight, because we know that people's situations change. And you know, I'm an optimistic person, and I have a lot of hope in this world too. But I think one of the things that victims find themselves in is when that first really serious incident happens, they want to believe, oh, it's just one time. He had a bad day, or she had a bad day at work, or she drank too much last night, not feeling good. We want to make excuses because we want it to get better. You know, we don't want to leave a relationship. By the time sometimes that happens, we've invested a lot of time, a lot of money. Like I said, sometimes there's kids. And so we want to believe that that's not going to happen again, because we want to believe that that person truly loves us. And so we tend to make excuses, and we tend to rationalize the behavior. And what I tell people is, okay, I hear what you're saying, but if your friend over here was telling you the same situation, what would you say to him? And this person said, I'd say get out. And I said, you're not any different.
But say again, the one question you shouldn't ask.
Please don't ask somebody, why don't they leave?
Okay.
Ask, what can I do to help you and support you? You matter to me. I care. I had coffee with a lovely woman yesterday, and she's struggling because somebody that she works with, very bad abusive relationship. And she said, Elizabeth, I don't know what to say to her. I said, you know, go in. We have these little purple cards. We call them shoe cards because they can fit in your shoe, but they're about the size of a business card. Just give it to her and just say, you matter. I care about you, and I want you to be safe. How can I support you? I said, she may first look at you like, ugh, I don't want to talk about this, but give her some time. Just give her some time and keep sending her those messages, because that's not what she's getting at home.
Yeah. You know, there's that worry, though, if I do leave, how do I feed my children? How do I feed myself? Where will I live? You know.
Right. And we will connect people with resources. If they don't screen, you know, shelter, unfortunately, as you know, is always full. And we do bring in the people who are at the highest risk of death at that moment. But But if they need resources, if they need to be connected to attorneys or therapists or housing resources or food or whatever, we will connect you with resources. Absolutely.
Is there a question that I have failed to ask, or something that I have not brought to the forefront that you really want to make sure that you address?
I think one of the other things that I really want to address is for the community. Again, you started the conversation with if you know somebody, and that's the other piece. I too often have conversations, even with my own friends, who will say, you know, I thought that was going on. Well, if you think it, and you're not sure how to have that conversation, again, reach out. How do I have this conversation with somebody? This person's coming to work. I've noticed they're wearing their glasses or they're wearing a lot of makeup, but I can tell there's bruising. Or they have unexplained injuries and they're making some excuse about it. How do you have that conversation? How do you tell that person, again, how can I help you get out of this? How can I support you? What do you need? That's one of the biggest things, because, you know, as I watch the news and after these homicides, you'll hear people say, well, we knew there was something going on. We just didn't know what to do. Then ask. Reach out and ask. Nothing, you know, we're not going to ask you your name.
Right.
Everything is confidential. We're not going to ask you where you live. We're not going to ask any identifying information. We're just going to give you some words. We're going to give you some language of what you can do.
So, again, this domestic violence issue, it's not just Pam and Bob's issue.
No, it is not. This is a community issue. One of the things in our country, we spend $1.8 billion every year on the impact of domestic violence. Because domestic violence has a ripple effect. So people miss work. They have medical bills. They have legal bills. Sometimes they can't pay. So there's a real ripple effect to when domestic family violence occurs that we often don't realize. You know, especially when mom and dad now is deceased, as we have often seen in situations. So now we have children. Who's going to raise these children? Who can afford to raise them? How do we change the generational abuse that these children have been exposed to? This isn't just something that happens in somebody's little house between Pam and Bob. This is all of our problems, and we have to look at it this way. You know, so much of the violence that happens in any city, and Louisville is no different, at the core of it is family violence.
It's also scary, too. I just learned something, I don't know, about a year ago. My kids were little, and I thought, oh, they don't remember any of that. My daughter said something, because she was 2-3 years old. I just knew she didn't know. She didn't know. She said something just this past year about what she remembered, and it's stopped me in my tracks and made me nauseous. And I turned around and said, what? And she said, I remember that. I was blown away and hurt because that's in her now.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard people talk, did some great series at some of the churches down in the Park Duval area, and actually one of the pastors talked about, he grew up in a home where the domestic violence, and he said, you know, my parents didn't think I knew anything about it. He said, but my brothers and I, our room was in the basement. He said, we heard it all. He said, and the worst part was we couldn't see it. So we filled in the gaps, but we heard the thumps, we heard things breaking, we heard mom screaming, we heard him yelling, and we could hear what he was saying to her. So we knew that the two people who were supposed to be protecting us and loving us and caring for us and were supposed to love each other were hurting each other. He said we were scared to death, so we just laid in our bed just frozen, just praying it would end soon, and not knowing when we went upstairs what we would find. So kids, absolutely.
Yeah.
They may not see it, but they hear it, and they know it. You know, if you ever watch children, they watch the adults, and they watch what they're doing. What's their reaction? How are they behaving? And how are these two people interacting together? And is this normal? Is this the way it's supposed to be? And so, you know, that's one of the things we talked about is teaching people this is not normal.
Yeah, and this isn't. All right, before I let you go, I know for myself, I get all kind of crazy things. People say, we have this, we have that. And I call and say, I've got this, can you use it?
Right.
You will need things in order to protect these families, bed sheets, books, volunteers, money, gift cards, because
Yes.
the women have walked away from everything and can't even go buy themselves underwear.
Right.
What can we do for you?
Gift cards would be fabulous because we are able to give somebody something that they need. Maybe they need money to put a deposit down on an apartment or pay an LG&E bill, especially in situations where their perpetrator has billed, put it in their name. So gift cards are really helpful. Visa gift cards, Kroger gift cards, diapers. Diapers, feminine hygiene products and diapers are always some of the two biggest things because they're really expensive.
Yeah.
Those are some, and money, and then anybody wants to volunteer.
And I want to say, too, men can volunteer.
Absolutely.
Because those families and children need to see men who are standing, doing
That's right.
the right thing as an example. So I always think men go, what would I do there? No, there's a
yes.
lot.
There's a lot you can do. The gentleman who won a MENA Distinction Award this year, one of the things that he did and still does is he helps victims move. So he has a truck, because moving is expensive. And so he has a truck, and he has some friends that have trucks, and so he goes and he moves victims, or if they've got an apartment and they need, they've got a bed over here or a refrigerator over here, he goes and gets it. And he helps them, and he puts it up for them, and he gets things set up for them. So there's all of those types of things that men can do to help us. And just, again, be visible to let women know that they're good men out there.
All right. I thank you. And if you're
thank
thinking
you.
this is not something that I need to learn in my life that I didn't learn in school, you may not need it, but somebody you've come across.
1 in 3 women will suffer domestic intimate partner abuse in their lifetime. 1 in 3 women and 1 in 5 men. So, and I will be down at the March of Our Lives walk this Saturday. We will have a table. If you're there, please stop by and see me. I would love to have a conversation with you. I'd love to give you literature. Please come join us.
But everybody, there's always something that you can do to help.
Yeah.
I thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I thank you so much. I come up with these topics when I see something going on or somebody says something to me. So if you feel like there's something that you need to learn, or we all need to learn in life we didn't learn in school, please contact me any way you can. I'm here all the time. I'm here more than I'm home. So please, and let's all learn it together. This is a journey.
Yep.
Thank you for listening again.